Cartoons, Political Caricature of the American Era is a book that analyzes political cartoons from the Philippines during the American colonial period. It presents a collection of political cartoons providing insight into the socio-political climate of the Philippines during that time. The source is written by Alfred McCoy, an American historian and educator specializing in the history of the Philippines, foreign policy of the United States. He is widely recognized for his research on the impact of colonialism, imperialism, and the power dynamics in various societies, particularly in Southeast Asia. The book is written with Alfredo Roses, a prominent painter in the history of Philippine art, and a renowned writer of Philippine art books. Roses is also recognized for his contribution to the study of political history, particularly in the field of political caricature during the American era. The book was published on the year 1985 at the Vera Reyes Incorporated, located at 40 Valencia Street, Quezon City, 84 years after the American soldiers set foot in the rich lush land of the Pearl of the Orient Seas, the former colony of Spain, the Philippines. The main subject or theme of the source is all about the political caricatures that depicts the happenings of the Philippines during the American colonization period. It tackles about the situation during the American occupation. It tackles about the social injustices and inequalities that Filipinos faced during the American colonization period. These cards gained full expression during the American era and served as a reflection of Filipino attitudes and perceptions towards the coming of the Americans, with different authors classifying the United States as Uncle Sam, whom is characterized as mentioned above as a troll-like old man using his cannon to pay court to the virginal figure of Filipinas. The cartoon serves as a critique of American imperialism and its impact on the Philippines, highlighting issues such as racial discrimination, unequal job opportunities, and the exploitation of Filipino farmers by Americans. During this era, many Filipino citizens voiced out their concerns over the growing problems that the Americans brought onto the country, one of which is Fernando Amorsolo, a renowned Filipino portraitist and a painter known for his depictions of rural Philippine landscapes. He is known for his angriest political cartoons, which depicted the changing mores and times under American rule. William Howard Taft, the 27th President of the United States, is also mentioned in the book as the governor of the Philippines from 1901 to 1903, during which he focused on the economic development of the islands and gave the people some participation in the government. Juan Cruz, a Filipino poet who wrote the poem Hindi Ako Patay in 1903, is also mentioned in the book, stating that when he staged his poem Hindi Ako Patay in Malabon, drunken US soldiers stormed the place and wrecked the scenery when the Katipunan flag was raised. The courts then sentenced Juan to 2 years in imprisonment. Another Filipino citizen was charged by the courts and is no other than Aurelio Tolentino. Aurelio Tolentino is mentioned in the book as a playwright who was prosecuted by the American authorities during the early years of the American colonial rule in the Philippines. Tolentino was one of the nationalist writers who used their art to express their opposition to the American occupation and to advocate for Philippine independence. He was jailed for about 3 years and fined $2,000 for his seditious plays, which were intended to persuade other people to oppose the government, according to the Americans. Rafael Palma is also mentioned in the book. Rafael is a prominent figure in the early nationalist movement in the Philippines during the American colonial period. He was a lawyer, a writer, and a politician who played a significant role in advocating for Filipino independence and promoting nationalism through his writings and speeches. In particular, Palma is known for launching the newspaper El Renacimiento, The Rebirth, 2 months after strict censorship was removed in the Philippines. El Renacimiento became the most influential of the early nationalist newspapers, featuring investigative articles and satiric cartoons that criticized the American colonial government and advocated for Philippine independence. However, the newspaper faced libel and sedition charges from the American authorities, which eventually led to its discontinuation. Another Filipino who's mentioned in the book is Dr. Dominador Gomez, a prominent Filipino labor leader and nationalist who was also involved in the struggle for Filipino independence during the American colonial period. He was a member of the Philippine Assembly and was known for his advocacy for labor rights and social reform. In the book, Dr. Gomez is depicted in a cartoon entitled The New Bird of Prey, which was also published in the newspaper El Renacimiento in 1903. Some specific events are mentioned and shown by cartoon drawings such as the following. 1. This scene is a political commentary on the concept of a public post being passed down as if it were a hereditary crown. The Filipino guy in the caricature represents the voice of the people who are opposed to the idea of political power being passed down within a family. 2. It also mentions about a commentary to the workings of the Manila police at the time, wherein it depicts a scene where a Filipino child steals a skinny meat from the Manila Police, and it was drawn by Fernando Amorsolo as a commentary on the workings, laziness, and systematic corruption of the Manila Police during that period. It also mentions the usage of colorum, illegal vehicles that were used as a means of transportation. The said cartoon is a critique on the lack of enforcement or regulations and the risks posed to public safety by these illegal vehicles. There is also a cartoon depicting the influence of the Americans to the Philippine archipelago. The book includes a political caricature that features Uncle Sam, the personification of the USA, riding a chariot pulled by Filipinos wearing school uniforms. The Filipino boys are carrying American objects such as a baseball bat, a book, and a flag, symbolizing the influence of American culture in the Philippines during the American colonial period. Another thing that has been mentioned here is about the United States rationing porridge to the politicians and members of the Progresista Party, while members of the Nacionalista Party look on and wait for their turn. The cartoon is a commentary on the patronage of the United States being coveted by politicians from either of the party. To sum it all up, the caricatures cartoons that were featured in the book are about the mismanagement of local police under the American influence, the sheer influence that the Americans have towards the Filipino masses, and the growing societal issues and concerns about the US using the country for its own interests and manipulating the Philippine politics and the masses. The language that has been used in the primary source is more on the English language. The caricatures conveyed a lot of political meanings and social commentaries, and they signify the way the creators think and the way the Filipino masses think during the American occupation. Symbolism and exaggeration was also used in the caricatures to shape the public opinion. One highlight of these terminologies is the way the people involved in the primary source keeps on referring the United States of America as Uncle Sam, a terminology that directly states that the USA is a troll-like old man using his cunning to pay court to the original figures of Filipinas, which directly means that the USA is using and manipulating the Filipino masses for its own interests. Another thing is Juan de la Cruz with a salakot is mentioned, a terminology that describes the Filipino people in the caricatures featured in the primary source. Manila was also described as a crippled by constant national interferences, incessant warfare between public officials, and described along the terms of an impoverished city with tawdry and pleasant air. Due to this representation, Manila became a breeding ground for prostitution and disease. Another thing to be mentioned here is the cartoon featuring a policeman picking out the cinema saying no kissing in public, to which an old couple were ecstatic about the news, and the young couple were mortified. This shows just how extensive the American influence since due to their appearance in the country, young people embraced the American way more than the traditional, more conventional way that their ancestors were used to. It is also worth mentioning that during the American occupation, the major publications mostly released articles containing the English language, making the American influence the country more obvious, aside from the fact that Manila was the city that they made to look more American.
During this time of the American era, the source reflects several patterns and trends including political issues, dynasty in politics, patronage, and economic disparity. It also depicted the transition from Spanish to American rule, expressing discontent with American rule in a subtle way due to loosening of censorship in 1901. The cartoons also depicted the rise of political families and dynasties, patronage politics, and economic disparity, highlighting negative consequences such as corruption, nepotism, abuse of power, poverty, unemployment, and social unrest. There are biases in the Americans' part, as it mentioned that Americans get angry every time a Filipino voices out their concerns about their reign. One instance when someone raised the flag of the Katipunan. The Americans got angry and ransacked the place, arresting the culprit. They deemed criminals when in reality they are not doing anything wrong. The source was created in the year 1985. The cartoons weren't published at the same time as the source though. During this time of the Philippine climate, campaigns to overthrow the Marcos dictatorship were running rampant. Political development and violence against the clergy, a group of ordained religious leader within a specific religious tradition. One factor that influenced the creation of the source is the economic challenges, which is somehow similar to the past events where the Americans colonized the Philippines. Another factor is the cultural resistance of the Filipinos during the challenges this time or period. One more factor includes the martial law culture. This may have influenced the creation of the source because it is somehow related or reflected the cultural climate during the American colonial period, including the restrictions on freedom of expressions. Moreover, these serve as a reminder that American occupation wasn't at all prosperous. The source reflects the colonial period's struggles for independence, political commentary, social inequality, and economic challenges. All of this provides insights into the conflicts, complexity, and aspirations of the Filipinos as they sail through the colonial rule. Economic and political challenges. The book provides a glimpse of the sentiments of Filipinos during the transition from Spanish to American rule. The political cartoons in the book depicts the reaction of the Filipinos to the new American governance and the changing socio-political landscape of the Philippines. The intended audience of the source are the Filipino people. Firstly, the authors may have chosen to focus on cartoons and caricatures that are most relevant to the Philippine political history during the American era, such as those depicting key elements, figures, and issues. Secondly, the authors may have provided historical and contextual background information to help readers understand the significance of the cartoons and their relationship broader political and social developments. Thirdly, the authors may have analyzed the cartoon's visual and textual elements to uncover their intended meanings, messages, and rhetorical strategies. Finally, the authors may have adopted a critical and analytic tone that encourages readers to reflect on the role of cartoons and caricatures in shaping public opinion, political discourse, and historical memory. The events might have affected the creation of the source are the various problems occurring at the same time. This source was created and even when the caricatures were published. One might be political climate as it is might be somehow offensive to the politicians at that time. The elections, government policies, social movements can shape the contest and content and theme of the caricatures. The caricatures may reflect conflicts and tensions during the unrest or significant political development is happening. Overall, the source provides a unique perspective on the socio-political climate during the American colonial period. As seen through the lens of political cartoons and caricatures, the source is particularly valuable for understanding the Filipino perspective and the impact of American colonialism on the country's development. It served as a reminder of the experiences faced by the Filipinos during the American occupation. They serve as eye-openers to the realities experienced by the people under the American occupation and offer a critical analysis of the political processes during the American colonization in the Philippines.